Apparently, wanting new Canadian immigrants to have Canadian values is controversial. According to a recent editorial in the Globe and Mail, the idea that the federal government would even define Canadian values is, quote, frightening, unquote. Only in Canada. Hi, I'm Candice Malcolm. The feigned outrage continues over Kelly Leitch's supposedly contentious point that Canada should screen would-be immigrants to weed out folks who have values that are anti-Canadian. This is only the most recent example of politically correct culture gone mad. The disproportionate response from the media demonstrates just how nervous the liberal elites are when it comes to any issue related to immigration. But despite this faux controversy, Kelly Leitch's point is perfectly reasonable and very much correct. Of course, Canada should screen potential newcomers for cultural red flags. There's simply no room in our society for certain barbaric cultural practices like female genital mutilation or forced marriage. So why would we let people who hold those values into Canada in the first place? Canada already rejects potential newcomers who go against the Canadian way of life. The federal government has all sorts of rules and laws and regulations when it comes to eligibility for potential newcomers to migrate into Canada. For instance, you can't be a member of a terrorist organization. You can't have been complicit in a war crime. You can't have a criminal background, a serious health condition, or a history of any sort of fraud. You also can't be a practicing polygamist. Until 2002, Canada used to conduct in-person interviews with all potential immigrants. Anyone who wanted to migrate to Canada had to schedule an appointment and then travel to the nearest Canadian consulate to meet with Canadian officials. Those Canadian officials would conduct an interview with an individual or with a family to determine the, quote, personal suitability for Canada. In other words, they would screen newcomers for anti-Canadian values. The only reason we stopped that process is because it became too expensive, and cost-conscious governments like the Chrétien government and the Harper government have been reluctant to bring it back. But it isn't outside the realm of possibility for the Canadian government. We used to do it up until a couple of years ago. Look, millions of people from all over the world want to come to Canada. It's a great problem to have. It means that we should be as selective as possible. And no, this has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with standing up for the Canadian way of life and for Canadian values, and for demanding that our politicians do the same. Canada should only select newcomers who will actually contribute positively to our society. We want folks who are going to work hard, play by the rules, learn our language, and adopt to our way of life. We want people who will love and appreciate Canada, regardless of where they come from. How is any of this controversial? Frankly, I think it's irresponsible to pretend that there are no core Canadian values. That's what Prime Minister Justin Trudeau thinks. He said it in a recent interview with the New York Times. I also think it's unethical to turn a blind eye on the barbaric cultural practices that have been imported in Canada and they're now being practiced in Canada. For instance, sex-selected abortions have become a major problem in some major Canadian cities, like Vancouver. Canada's leading medical journal now advocates a law to prohibit revealing the sex of an unborn baby until the third trimester of pregnancy, the point where a doctor will no longer perform an abortion unquestioned. Look, in some cultures, aborting a baby girl may be perfectly acceptable. In some parts of the world, sexism against girls is so ingrained that it is actually considered honorable for brothers and fathers to murder girls who disobey strict cultural rules. Honorable. In other parts of the world, women are forced to cover themselves from head to toe, even their faces and their eyes, before they can leave the house. Girls in those parts of the world have absolutely no say on how they dress, who they marry, when they marry, where they go, or how they live their lives. Why would we tolerate any of that in Canada? Those are not Canadian values. Let's not pretend these issues don't exist. They do, and it's a problem right here in Canada. And no, it isn't racist or prejudiced to bring these up and lead a conversation.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.